Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Aulia Sabita. I want to explain about genre analysis on reading passage. A definition genre. According to Annie Friedman, first, genre is an organizing concept for our cultural practices. Second, any field of genres constitutes a network of contrasts according to a variety of parameters. Third, genre is a place, occasion, function, behavior, and interactional structures. It is very rarely useful to think of it as a kind of text. Fourth, cultural competence involves knowing the appropriate tennis principle for any genre, knowing the kind of margin you have with it, being able to vary it, knowing how to shift from one to another, and how many factors will be involved in any such shift. Genre is really important in reading skill. It will affect the student's comprehension in reading skill because it provides the filter of a text to help the student identify text. Understanding genre means that the student is easier to interpret a text because each genre has different social function, generic structure, and linguistic feature. This characteristic is really useful for a reader to understanding a text because it explains how text is organized. Another definition genre is a subject that discusses the grouping of text types. In its current application, attention to genres or what we can call variety of text has significantly increased, especially in analyzing discourse or discourse analysis for both first language and foreign language teaching, especially in the process of teaching English for specific purpose. B. Genre analysis. Genre analysis is a process of looking at several samples of a particular genre to analyze their similarities and differences in terms of their purposes, microstructure, and language choice. Genre analysis is an analysis used to describe the purpose, characteristics of language and text patterns and directed at the basic framework. Genre analysis aids to our understanding of how language is used within an important discourse community, and is a model of applied linguistics in its best sense. It draws on linguistics and social linguistic theory to classify the nature of language use and language learning in an educational setting. There are three of the approaches to genre analysis. First, Swallows approaches. In this approach, focus on the move and steps analysis within a genre. Australian systems or functional systems method focus on the form and function of language. Last, New Rhetoric focus on the intention and effect of language. See genre category. Genres in writing are distinguished in the categories of nonfiction and fiction. Nonfiction is a genre that contains writing that do not require imagination. In this genre, the content of writing usually contains a narrative or scientific authorship, articles, tips and tricks, historical records. Fiction is a genre that usually a story that requires imagination in its processing. Here are the types of fiction genre: scientific science fiction, horror, fantasy, romance, fan fiction, humor, mystery, historical fiction, and adventure. Genre structure. The function of generic structures is to tell the reader how the text was made. According to generic structures, analysis can make you more understanding about the management of genres. English is one of the language that has many types of text. Each text has a generic structure. In general, generic structure is the structure or pattern of presentation in an English text. One of the important things to learn is to know the term generic structure. Generally, generic structure is systematic or flow of presentation of information contained in English. Each English text has a different generic structure. The term in generic structure, there are introduction, the pattern that first appears when you create text review is introduction. In these initial patterns, the author is asked to explain about the main description of something to be written. Issue, explain the issues that are being limited. Usually things that are easy to cause pros and cons, opinions agree and vice versa. Explanation contains a series of sequences of events from a process that is a topic of the text. We can also explain by using the question of why and how, so that the explanation we convey is more comprehensive. General classification. The term is intended for a general review of the noun being lifted. General statement. Judging from its own meaning, the term expresses an opinion in general. Usually, the general statement is expressed directly by the author as a form of expression about the phenomenon of event raised, so that makes the readers are led to agree to what is started by the author. Interpretation. In this last pattern, a writing will appear about the user's impression when using the product. If the product is a book, then the author will write their impression when reading the book, whether they get carried away in the story or not. This last pattern will further help readers to consider the products reviewed. Abstract. Summary of the story is usually in the form of unusual or odd event in the story to be conveyed. Argument. Statements that support issue as well as unsupportive statements. These two evidence tools need to be balanced in order to be able to take the decision. Background event. Explain how an event is mentioned in the first paragraph. Newsworthy event. Contains an introduction or orientation about who, what, where, and when the event. Newsworthy event will briefly answer who, what, where, and when from the daily event. Conclusion. This term is a part of the text in the form of the author's conclusion to the topic raised. Orientation. The term refers to the introduction in a text. This initial part will lead readers to guess what kind of contents they read. It can also be the guardian of a story. Reorientation, the author's final statement of the experience that has been done. It's usually an impression or impression. Thesis, paragraph containing the author's statement on the matter being discussed. Description, this term is presented to complete the overall picture of the nouns already mentioned in the general classification, so that every reader will be more recognized from the description given by the author. Event. This term denotes an event or event told in a text. The last is evaluation. Evaluation given by the author of the work being discussed. Okay? So that's my explanation about the genre analysis on reading passage. If there are any mistake, I'm so sorry. And thank you for listening my explanation. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.